So, welcome back to the show, Justin and Corrin. I'm so excited to have both of you here, and Justin, you're the first returning guest. So, this is super fun for me. You guys, I think you've worked together for like 20 years, and you've really made a great partnership. Can you tell me a little bit about your professional journey together?
Yeah. You want me to shoot or you want to go first, Corinne?
You go ahead, go first.
I can't get rid of her. I've been trying for 20 years.
Yeah.
No, just kidding. Yes. So we started Corinne, were you at Ardent or did you start at Essential?
Essential software.
Yeah, Essential. So I started at Ardent in the mailroom when I was a sophomore or junior in high school. And then we started working together, what was it, 2002, 2003, something like that?
Something around in there, like early 20s. I think I was just turning legal to drink.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And I was just coming out of Suffolk, and she worked with my father, who was the EVP of one of the farms. And you were officially like his admin, right? That's how you started?
Yeah, it was an interesting story. I started out as a temp and was able to meet Jason Silvia, who's Justin's dad. And one day he was trying to get into the office and his badge wouldn't work. And I buzzed him in and I was like, oh, you didn't realize they fired you, not knowing he was a founder of the company. So I thought that my little snazzy joke, not realizing.
That's hilarious.
Probably shouldn't have said that, but that started and kicked off a lifelong partnership.
That's great.
Yeah. And then you were sitting in his office, and I think somebody was out for like a month or something on maternity leave. And he's like, it's just you and me, kid. Like, let's figure it out.
Literally
Remember?
how we started.
Yeah. Yeah. So we started way back, right? I was at Essential. I came in and I did support renewals under my manager at the time was Frank Good, who was, of all the bosses I think you could have as starting your career, Frank was one of the best, right? I mean, he like actually invested in you, right? And he taught you the business. And he was, when it comes to support renewals and kind of, we called it support renewals. It really was, right? Term it that back. And it was different.
The retention department.
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
But he was good, man. Frank was really good. I think we had like 97% retention, Corinne, consistently, 98, 97. I remember like we were in the office at that point up in Westboro, Massachusetts. And it was a cool office, man. It was like it was 3 floors, and it had like this open U forum that you'd go around. And the 3rd floor was like all glass doors. And it was where like the big wigs were. And then 2nd floor was like, I guess you'd say like services cats, right? And operations. And then the lower floor was more sales. But I remember Jason was like, I'm not sitting up. I'm sitting down in the middle floor. You remember? God, it's so funny. But that's how we get our start.
Great. Yeah. I think you mentioned, Corrin is I think you called her the brains of the business. And can you describe like how you guys like split up the way you work together?
Yeah. I mean, go ahead, Corinne.
So I feel like in our careers, we kind of went parallel tracks. Justin was major customer facing out there. You can tell by his personality, wheeling and dealing and making deals, right? And taking customers on board. And I learned all of the business operation, leadership aspects, people aspects, strategy. My background is in organizational management and psychology. So understanding how business works and understanding how people work within a business.
And now you're doing, I think, the partner ecosystem for ActivTrak. Can you tell me a little bit about how operations plays into that?
That's a good question. It's
Everywhere.
Massively,
Yeah.
right? Literally everywhere. You have to have a good foundation if you want to be able to do things at scale and velocity and have speed and traction with how you interact with your customers and internally how you process information. So operationally, it's super important on how you manage your partner ecosystem, be it the MSP side or the VAR side. Wouldn't you agree? Yeah.
Absolutely. Everything they do, there's an operational component behind it, right? Whether it's coming in through the website, how you skim your website and pulling that data to see who you want to proactively reach out to, how they come in and they can see the data, how you respond to them, how you operationally bring them on board contractually, how you manage those contracts, how you process deal registration to deal flow to assigning AEs, how you make them have the ability to train themselves and take learning journeys, how operationally you
self-service, right? Because you want to help them accelerate their deal cycle, right? So you want it to be easy to transact and do business with you, right? Because your partner arm helps you how do you say, what's the word? Exponentially increase your revenue.
I was wondering what it was. Yes.
Right? Yeah. So it's like really important to have that partner arm and Then to be able to transact quickly means that you have faster time to revenue.
That makes a lot of sense. And when you're talking about operations, it really makes me visualize like the differences between basically the sizes of a SaaS business. There's not a whole lot of operations in sales on the earlier side. And then as you start to grow, it's a completely different animal entirely. Does it seem that way to you? Like,
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
I'll let Justin
absolutely.
answer that from a strategy business perspective on the front end, as far as like your customer, what you're trying to do. And then I'll talk about the infrastructure and the people and how you need to manage differently between, 20 to 50, 50 to 100, because the strategies are different.
Yeah. So Jeremy, I just want to make sure I understand the question. Is it specific to
I
partners?
don't know.
Or,
I was just
or
chatting, but we could make
yeah.
it more. Let's make it specific to partners. Sure.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah. So when you look at, first of all, when you think about partner ecosystem, right? AWS, Microsoft,
Mhm.
Google, they became who they are, not because they grew a sales team from, 50 people to 10 million
Yeah.
people, right? They exponentially grew their revenue by using partners. If you look at what IBM did, for example, IBM, and I think it was maybe 2010-ish in that ballpark, they made a strategic decision to stop growth, but use partners for delivery, for sales, certain components, right? And how you co-sell, co-market, co-solution, and co-build with partners is critical to your business,
Mhm.
right? First and
Mhm.
foremost, understanding how you fundamentally found your partnership with those businesses, right? There are core things you have to have in place from an operations standpoint, but you also have to make it frictionless so they can do business with you, right? And then operationally, how you start structuring things out. I mean, I'll let Corinne speak to it, but you have to be able to support them along the way at every journey. And as you grow and build the ecosystem, that has to expand from multiple different levels, whether it be your VAR program. Usually the reseller or influencer or reseller usually set your program, right? That's where you start,
Mm.
right? So you want people selling your products, okay? The infrastructure in which you need to be able to do that, right? Things like training, contracts, ease of execution of contract, not having people in the way every time they want to sell
Yeah.
something or
Sure.
needing to transact for you, right? So structuring that stuff out from a VAR standpoint is critical. Then you can progress into like OEM, strategic, managed service partners that are either taking your product and building their own product around it, or even taking the VARs to the next level, saying they're a value-added reseller. They sell our product, but they offer services for it, or they offer a connector for it, or something along that lines. And then from a managed services standpoint, that's really like the tip of the like the tip of the
Yeah.
top, right? From your own strategic and then MSP, because they market, they embed it in the core offerings, they sell it. They have to train huge sales teams. They have to support it. They have to manage it. They have to deliver it. And then they have to expand it, success it, and renew it, right? So every facet of your business from an MSP standpoint has to work
Yeah.
correctly. And then
One
from
of
an
the things to say, Justin, there is also too, your ecosystem matures as you as a company mature, and as your offering and as your software or whatever you have out in the marketplace matures. And I think that sometimes, you look at all the revenue that you can get with the partner ecosystem, and you might want it to be accelerated, but your offering in the market on the direct side of your business is not as much. So those are pairs that happen in stages and growths as you go on your journey to 100 million.
When you're describing this, it sounds almost like product to me. Like you want a super easy to consume product. You want no friction between. It's almost like the partner side of it is its own product for your partners.
Yeah. I mean, that's like things like alpha and beta releases of your product. You don't have partners leverage
Yeah.
them, right?
Yeah.
Right. They don't have that it becomes a gong show, right? So it's like when your product becomes stable, when you have the structure that your product is stable and working for, probably 2 to 3 million in customers, right? Depending on the size of what you sell. But let's say between 150 to 500 clients, right? Depending on what the structure of your pricing model is. When you are sustainably managing that customer base, then you can start pulling in partners because it's repeatable. You understand you're not, you don't have 50 customers. You're still trying to figure things out, right? And then they come along for the journey with you as you develop and advance.
Makes sense.
And then inherently the revenue ecosystem drives the footprint and ARR of the business, which makes it more valuable, which then you can invest more in your own business and start off like it becomes a cyclical operation.
Right. Yeah. And this, while you're talking, I was thinking about something you mentioned last time that, there's a pattern where companies will create plans and get excited. Maybe it's to launch a new partner ecosystem, but then they abandon ship after about 12 weeks. Personally, this breaks my heart anytime this happens. I hate it actually. because, the real, especially if a winning strategy, the real payoff is maybe next year. I'm curious, where do you think what's behind the surface when this kind of pattern occurs for strategy execution?
From a strategy and execution standpoint, I think it's really important to make sure you have people on your team that have been where you're trying to go. If you haven't been, you don't have people on your team that have achieved what you're trying to achieve, there's sometimes lack of confidence, right? You don't have the grit, or you haven't seen something through to all the end. And what happens is they're like, okay, we had a meeting, we set the strategy, everybody's off in going in their directions, and you're looking for something to change within a quarter. And typically it takes about, 16 to 18 months to see real sustainable change after you kick off a project, implement it, start to get data points back, make revisions, right? The things that you consider mistakes are usually your biggest growth drivers, but you have to see that full life cycle through to know where you can make adjustments. So stopping before you even get there, you don't get the payoff, to your point, in the end, to get all those learnings and to be able to accelerate your growth.
Yeah. And there's a difference between a strategy footprint, which you believe in and have systematically known will work, right? Or it's something, that maybe is the industry different, but you're confident it'll work and you've sourced that strategy with clients. You understand how it would impact them and you go after it. There's a difference between defining the strategy and executing against it versus components of that strategy not working and adjusting course, right? Right? Like everything you do is always going to have a friction barrier, right? Like it just always is. And usually closest to success is when it's the hardest, right? It's like you're dealing with the final level of problems that usually are the most complex. You got to let things play. If you believe, first of all, the number one thing is you have to believe in the strategy and you have to have buy-in. And it can't be like, this is the way to go, but man, it's hard. So we're going to just let it go, right? That's one of the biggest things I see.
I'm just thinking back to, all the times I've seen this happen, and it is like a lack of belief happens, or I don't know what happens, but people, they lose their faith in the idea after they've, had a few hits from, getting in the ring of real life.
Or it's the squirrel. It's like, oh, I read this today. This is the direction, right? Yeah.
The squirrel is just as dangerous as not having the
Yeah, exactly.
Well, can you share a good example where you've seen a strategic pivot that wasn't given enough time to mature?
There's a lot to see. Yeah. Honestly, I think the biggest one, and I'm not going to name company names, is we came into a company. I brought in like 10 or 15 people. We built a lot of amazing things there. And we looked at their business, and this company, if they had just listened and the founders had literally listened, stuck through and executed on it, they would have probably been part of the Wiz acquisition for multiple $1 billion. And when you look at what they had, it was basically a hub and spoke, right? Hubs, massive enterprise companies it was a partner business. It was massive enterprise companies that had all like thousands upon thousands of resellers and partners and all these, just this huge ecosystem, right? And every one of them had it. They had massive enterprise clients, which is usually the hardest component of a SaaS company to bring. They have, right? They also had a digitized product that was built off of the big three's data model. And it was designed for them to be able to co-sell with partners. So the problem with that was they thought they had this brilliant idea about automating referrals and things, which at scale, there's thousands of them, right? Either Google, AWS, Microsoft will say, I don't want my sales guys wasting time, anything under 50K or above. We're going to kick it to a partner. Inversely, a partner might need to spend, too much time trying to figure this out, and anything 100K, they bring it to them, all right? They had the digital product. They had to re-architect that product. So it was basically entry level into each of the hubs. So now think about it. You have partner A and you have 10 enterprise customers, right? You have partner A that sells with all 10 of those customers. They do, right? We had a play that structured out the enterprise hubs, and that partner started with one of the hubs, and then you could expand them across all of the hubs. We built them out modeling that showed if they change direction, and we weren't talking like a massive direction texture of the product, little strategy shift would have been pretty much in play. It would have been 80 million in year one, and at the end of year two, when it monetized, it would have been like 80 million, and then it was exponential, like 160 in year two, from a $20 million footprint. They slid down the path, and then I think it was the CEO who technically designed the product just changed his mind and didn't want to do it, and they basically stagnated. And I mean, you know exactly what I'm talking about. So
Yeah, I mean, we live in this like instant gratification world, and we're all conditioned to that. And as a marketer, I'm always frustrated because people respond to the same things as they always have. You're going to get this amazing benefit with no downside, and
right.
reality is never that way. There's always a downside. There's always some time. Nothing is instant that's really meaningful, but we still respond to it.
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope. 100%.
Well, you were talking about, last time we talked about it taking 16, 18 months to see real changes in the margin of a SaaS for professional services. Can you break down like what are the different milestones that you'd expect to see along the way if they're on to know you're on the right track?
Do you want to go, friend?
You take that one because I was going to talk more on the operational side, like what things you need to have in place as you start to grow.
Okay. Yeah. So from margin increase in a Stripe, first of all, you have to have good analytics of your business, right? And you have to understand where you're delivering, right? So first and foremost, you have to understand that footprint, whether you're billable with customers, are you doing a lot of investment to fix things? Are you doing a lot of work with customer success or support from a services org? Really isn't billable, but they don't have anybody else to go to. You have to understand your business first and foremost, right? And then from a trend standpoint, you have to look at what the footprint of billable work coming in is and what that pipeline growth like. Understand what your capacity to deliver is at your utilization footprint. And depending on who you are, you set it from 70 to 90%, right? The big GSIs are in the 90% range. They want their customer facing people 90% of the time working with customers and billing, right? But you have to look at your margin footprint, which is how many hours do I work? Am my cost correct? My cost, were my resources costed correctly, right? What can I pay them at scale? Then inversely, when do I need partners to come in? And then how much am I charging within the market for my actual realization of margin, right? All these different things have to be looked at and aligned to be able to execute cleanly. Then it becomes getting a level set of how much utilization you truly are pulling from your business, right? And then you have to find where the leakage is, right? If you want to get to 80% billable utilization and you're only at 65, you got to figure out why. Do I have capacity? Am I spending too much time in other places? Do I not have the right best practice methodology? All that stuff comes in. And then from a services business standpoint, you want tiered delivery, right? Meaning consultants do what they do, senior consultants do what they do, solution architects, principals, whatever it is. But it's do it the same every single time, right? The reason you want it the same every single time and not different with each customer and different methodologies is you can't build out a velocity business or even look at velocity if everybody's doing things differently. So you have to finally set your best practices, right? So along that 18-month journey, you want to start with utilization. You want to look at how you're delivering, right? And that's usually for good analytics on it, you're looking at 6 months, 2 quarters minimum, right? Then you have to adjust to make sure you're fixing the problems. And then as Corrin will tell you, to see the true impact of that, right? If you're looking over a holistic year period, it's going to take you another 6 or 8 months to actually get the benefit of that. So to flip a business, flip a P&L, you're looking at a minimum a year, usually more like 18 months.
Yeah, definitely. And on the people side of that, typically when you're smaller, you're hiring generalists. You need somebody that can do a little bit of
all the things,
all the things, right? But as you mature, you start going down into role taxonomy, making sure you have the correct roles, making sure that you have specialists in their domains. And to Justin's point, and you're looking at their utilization based on their skill set and what their price can go for in the market. You're not going to be able to do that if you don't have the right headcount and if you don't have the right mix of skills across your organization to be able to deliver. We talk about this all the time between what's a principal and a solution architect. And what does that look like? And when do you need a solution architect within your business rather than just a senior consultant? And when are you going to move over from feature and technology selling to providing business solutions? And that's a change as you grow. So the level of skill that you need within your organization also needs to change and grow with that.
Makes a lot of sense.
And Corrin and I deal with this all the time. You can't just expect people to be there. You have to give them you can't set role growth without actually giving them a weight, right? So you have to really set that stuff.
Yeah, I'm just thinking of the parallels to when you're very small it is like no slack in the system. You're like, it's difficult. And if
Yep.
you don't have a huge cash injection from somebody, then, you're like a lot of pain. Then you hire a generalist. And then, oh man, more pain. Then you hire another generalist. And yeah, it's difficult to hit the right hiring point, I would say, when you're a smaller stage company, so that, you've got everything covered, but you're not at any cash flow risk at the very beginning. Right. And can you draw some parallels about how does this cycle of like balancing the slack change as you mature? Is it almost like the same problem? It's just way bigger.
Well, go ahead. You can go.
Yeah, I think once you're getting to that 50 million to 100 million, that's when you start dialing things
Mhm.
in. And to Justin's, you had to be like kind of like laying the groundwork and thinking about that infrastructure when you're 20 million, even though you're not going to execute on it. So that's talking about career road mapping, making sure you have enablement, defining what is required at each threshold of skill advancement, and then making sure that you actually have the network to then go out there and procure and retain that talent, right? We talked about this last time. Headcount is your highest fixed cost. It costs a lot of money to attrition costs you a lot of money. So making sure that you care and feed for the talent that you have, it pays dividends in the end.
Yeah, absolutely. And it also depends on the type of business you are too. If your services are being scoped and sold, right, productize them is one of the best ways that you can get acceleration and repeatability in the market. Meaning, if you have a database and you deploy it the same way every single time, right, don't sell that on a custom sale. Make it repeatable. Look at your demo, how long it takes, and sell it that way, right? Things like that.
Fee is your friend.
Yeah.
Exactly, right? Yeah. And then you also have to look at your sales, and don't mind me, Mickey, stop, dude. You get in. Sorry. But yeah, so you also have to look at your too. How consistent to a pipeline are your sales team? If you have massive swings, like we're gonna close $1 million, but you close 50, and then the next quarter you close 3 million, you need to be pretty strategic about how you have to deliver. If that is kind of how your business is operating to now, without consistency of pipeline and consistency of sale, I would argue that one of the most important things you can do is get yourself a consistent staff augmentation partner that you can pull in as you need. But you have to be smart about it, because you have to look at your business and be like, what components of delivery am I good at, that I can have good documentation to, and that aren't custom? That's the stuff you want to move to a partner that they can learn quick and be pulled in at any given time, right? So it's a balance.
It's like you're talking about like the core competencies versus what you could also do it internally, but if you have good enough training and it's standardized enough, that can help, handle that flexibility with a staff augmentation partner.
Right. Yeah. And then when you get to the 20 to 50 million range, usually your pipeline, there might be 5 to 10% fluctuation in closure. You might be a little over 140, you might be a little under, but usually at that point, you have good sales leadership. They're scrubbing their AE's pipeline. SDRs and opportunity generation is included with marketing. They have a pretty solid engine. If you have gotten to 20 to 50 million, it's a good engine, right? It's running, it's working, right? The company's established, right? It's there. Some can do it in 3 years, some take 10, doesn't matter. But at one of our companies, we at EDB, they were stuck at 25 million for 11 years. 25, 26, 29, jumped down to point, right? We came in and with 2 years got them to 150, right? So it's all about how you turn on the levers and get things to roll. But if you have sustainable sales at that point, that's when you can start expanding your services headcount consistently, right? And then the discussion becomes, if you're truly billable, it's like, there's really not many arguments you have to have at a billable P&L, right? It's like, I have X amount sold, my capacity is Y, and I can't deliver. So you either have customers waiting 3 months to get value, or we need to hire. But it doesn't matter, because I have 30% margin built into my business, and every person I hire, we're going to make money off them anyway. So it's like a simple argument. When it's a costed P&L, right, or a negative P&L, which Corrin and I both know I love running. I hate it, because it always becomes a value conversation, right? But it's sell a product and onboarding's embedded, right? And they don't do it right. They're not looking at the cost to onboard. They don't journal the funding over the organization for cost. There's a million things they don't do. If you're going to do that, then you have to be strategic about how you present the value of revenue versus how much time you're spending. These things, right? But
Yeah, it's really, you're bringing up this important point, which is the way you look at the unit economics makes certain discussions way easier or more difficult. And if it's just hard to see the real picture, like if you can't see the unit economics, it's, and some things become overly difficult or you get incentivized in the wrong ways. Like, oh, this has to be minimized. Yeah.
Yeah,
Called the executive buy-in.
Hmm.
It's
it
just that
is.
simple.
Yeah.
It is. And this is the biggest, it's funny. We've been at a smaller company. We've been at Essential, IBM, EDB, Workspan, ActivTrak, and other things in between. And to a point, I don't think I've ever seen anybody really do utilization the right way across. They don't learn how to track your services team's utilization. That is the most important thing. If you're 2 people or you're 20 people, that is the gauge of where you go. Simple as
Yeah.
you have to track utilization. You want billable time, customer facing, non-billable, customer facing. I mean, depending on how you structure it, obviously bench time, and then customer success or any other features you want. But the core things you want to look at are how much time you're billable versus investment versus in front of customers as a whole. It's
Yeah.
critical.
Makes complete sense to me. Yeah. And we were talking about these different stages. And from the marketing point of view, I mean, I talked to a lot of SaaS people, and you start to see these trends that at least I've noticed some trends. And somewhere it's like right around 25 million, it seems to me they've really figured out a large portion of marketing. Like marketing just kind of works now. Whereas earlier on, it's like fits and starts and like half of something. And yeah, I don't know. This is what I observed.
Yeah, I would agree. Yeah, I mean, when you, Corrin, it's funny. Corrin and I think of marketing very different than probably you think of. Like when you think of marketing, tell me what you think of marketing organization.
I want you to generate revenue.
Right? But like, sometimes I think marketing is like you think of like Nike, right? And they have campaigns.
Well, they're
right?
brand. They want it to be famous. I mean, there's the be famous marketing, and there's the get your salespeople's calendars full. Kind of 2 different viewpoints, I suppose, and they influence each other. It's difficult to measure exactly how, because they're more likely to say yes if you. I mean, I even do it. Like I boost media. I pay to have some media boosted, but I cannot measure. I know it's helpful, but I can't measure how.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and Corrin, I don't know if you want to you've dealt with this a lot when we were doing right? How you, so everything starts in essence, one, at your branding level, right? What do you want to push out into the market? First of all, that has to be solid, right? If you start telling people about the things your product does, you're not going to be very successful.
That whole, the feature conversation is just not, and I think Justin and I talk about this all the time, remembering what problem you're trying to solve and how are you articulating that and how are you using that articulation to differentiate you from your competitors. And we talk about this all the time. What's the point of having seat warmers if the car won't start?
Yeah.
Like right? It's like, it's just the job of what you're selling isn't to do something. You're solving, right? You're presenting stories to people of how they resolve pain points or how, they drove revenue from solving problems, things like that, right? So you have to have your mission statement correct. You have to be able to articulate what your product solves for people in a way that actually, and once you have the ability to brand that and get it out there, you then have to have your structure to your website, right? How do you get people to your website? How do you do your search engine optimization? How do you do like your Google drop down quick? Like if they type a name, how do you get put in the drop down, right? SEO. Now that I actually understand my website and where the traffic is coming from, I can turn the traffic up, right? How do you route that traffic? What are they looking at? The analytics behind where they went, how long they're on your site, all that. You start building all that stuff out so you can have like MQLs or structured MQL move to your SDR team. So they have outbounding structures there. Then it becomes, how do you build your cadences and what are the best practices around cadences? Do I want to be emailing 50 times before I reach out? No, you don't. You want to like outreach, call, or LinkedIn touch point or comment, right? There's ways you can pull people. I see it all the time and it drives Corrin about. I'll go like this through. I'll go, Corrin, ready? I have a LinkedIn request.
Just count how many seconds till they pitch.
In 5 minutes, I'll get an email that says, I can solve this problem. It's like, it's useless. I don't want to listen. So you got to find a way in your customer base, but all that marketing component is huge for business.
Yeah, absolutely. Also when you start to get really specific or get to know your customers better and better, especially with paid advertising. This becomes even more important. People are interested in the smallest thing. I mean, it's like one tiny subcomponent of the problem. Like that's what they're there for. And that's what you talk about. You don't have to talk about all the other elements. It's like that little thing is exactly what you're here for. We're going to solve that today. There's nothing else to it, but it's easy to get confused with everything you could say and conflicting priorities.
100%. Usually the SaaS companies that either stall or they'll get to a certain point and then they stall, or they really have restrictive growth. It's usually because whoever's at the head of product doesn't understand that making 10 different buttons do a different thing, or putting an extra report in that has no value. None of that shit helps.
Yeah.
Right. Like a stable problem solving product that provides the result they're looking for over and over again. That's it.
And we always talk about that, making sure that your product is what they need to run their business. They can't run their business without your product. And to Justin's point, having another report is typically not solving that problem.
Yeah.
No, we see it all the time. It's like, you have your questions, but the thing that frustrates Corrin the most is when you make the decision to bring people in that are experts in growth, that have done it multiple times, have seen it done by people that are better than everybody, like have really built businesses from zero, taken them public and sold for multiple billions, and you've worked with them, you know how to do certain things, right? And you know how things work. When you see certain things that they've been doing for months and months or years and years, that's the way to them.
Yeah.
Right. When you bring people like Corrin, the biggest thing that you need to do is actually listen to the experts, because they have fresh eyes. And when they're like, you're pushing spaghetti up a hill, why would you ever do that? Flip the model. You need to lead from the top down, right? Listen to them, or things like that, right? Listen to that are experts in their field. Like Corrin will tell you, like, number one, I suck at operations on any level, right? I suck at it because I hate it, right? Literally, this is true. I was trying to do something today and I couldn't get it to export. I literally threw my computer across the room. She does all day long. And I'm like, losing my mind. But it's like,
you missed a marketing opportunity right there. That should have been a clip.
Yeah, right? Something. Yeah. Oh my goodness. But yeah, no, like you have to surround yourself with people that are experts in there. That's the best. That's the best thing you can do. And know what you're good at.
Who, not how.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
That
is
I can relate to this frustration. I did like a coaching program for entrepreneurs a while back, and people would, they would buy time with me and then not take my advice. And it was so frustrating, and be like, well, we're here at the same point, same week, and nothing has changed. So,
one of the things I also think is important is find people that complement your gap. That sometimes people were in competition a lot. And I think one of the things that Justin and I have been uniquely able to solve is that we have strengths in different areas, and it's okay to fill someone else's gap and allow someone else to excel in an area that, is not your forte, or to his point, you're throwing laptops. Like, maybe you shouldn't be the guy that's exporting Power BI,
So how do we do? So I want to ask about, how do you do this? Because it takes some wisdom to know when it's something, I got to fix this as a problem, like this is blocking me, versus I'm just going to live with it. Someone is going to I'm going to hand this over, and like, I will always suck at this issue. Let's move on. How do you know personally, which way to go? What are good signs for a leader to take?
Well, I think it depends on the impact of the problem first and foremost, right? Like usually when you get in your leadership, you're dealing with the worst problems. If you're not dealing with the worst problems of your organization and business, you need to kind of reassess how you're leading people, because if you're in the day-to-day, you're not an executive. You want to be, you trust the people to deliver. But when you think of the problems, I think you have to look at them of impact, right? If it cost you ARR, or it's costing you sales, or it's pissing off customers, which in essence will churn, that's a big thing you got to solve, right? Like you have to fix that stuff. Depends on the problem, I guess I would say. Like it depends on.
Justin always goes straight to the business line, and I always go straight to the people, right? I think that self-awareness is really important for executives, and curiosity. Always being curious. Don't think you always have the answer. Be open to answers coming to you in various places, and have the self-awareness to know that it's impossible for you to know everything, right? And, trying to control all the uncontrollables. You have to have that self-awareness to know that that's not possible. and having an infrastructure of resources, people, networks, and mentors that you can lean on to help you bridge those gaps.
It makes a lot of sense. I'm just thinking about, my colleagues throughout all of my life. And I know there were people that were self-aware. I know there's been moments when I've been like self-aware and not about certain things. And it seems to be like just going off the rails to something else. It seems to me that it's around your kind of how much you feel like you need to protect your ego and your position. Like it's also kind of similar to sales somehow. Like if you are comfortable and you don't need anything, it's way easier to actually get like real input from the environment. Like these things are not working versus like if you're feeling like afraid, it's very difficult to see some of these. That's what I found anyway.
Yeah, it's funny because one of the things that I'm totally like jumping the shark
Do
here
it.
on this, but one of the things you were going to talk to us about is like, what's your favorite book?
Yeah.
Right. And Justin and I have been like,
What's your favorite
what's
book?
your favorite
Yeah.
book? I haven't read a book in forever and everything, but it made me really like think about this. Like right before we got on, I'm like, what's my favorite book? So, and it's not a business book, but it's the 4 Agreements by Don. Yes. And one of the agreements, I think it's the second agreement, is not to take things personally. So when you're talking about like knowing when and how to do things, or if something doesn't work, or if someone's giving you feedback, or if something that you tried is not sticking and someone has to deliver a hard truth, try to step outside of yourself and not take it personally. And I think that's one of the things that has worked between Justin and I, is that we're kind of brutally honest with each other, like almost to a fault. And, being able to have that feedback and understand not to take things personally, I think is like really like a good mantra to have is when you're working in business. And that is one of like my favorite books, and it has nothing to do with business, but I think a lot of the principles are applicable.
Yeah. Love it.
Yeah, I would agree. I would say that's the one thing of all the people I've worked with in my career. The one person that I can always count on to tell me the reality is Corrin. Not only like, there's no question, like Corrin, first of all, I know her so well. I know when I'm in trouble. First of all, like I know I'm in deep shit. When she gets quiet and she just is like, I'm like, oh my goodness. But literally, right? But she'll also be like, don't tell me how I feel. You know what I mean? Like or this, tons of them, like Corrin, like I'm like, oh my God, like I wasn't intending that, but she called me on my shit, which is important. But she'll also tell me on multiple different levels, like, do you not understand like why that's even an issue? And I'm like, what? Like, we just didn't, like, she's like, no, they're telling us this. Like she like when you're doing something directly, sometimes it's hard to see the wider view. She had exceptional ability to look at things and say, I feel like something's coming, or something's off, or they just don't get it. Like she's amazing at that. Amazing.
And that's the part, always being curious, right? Not thinking that I know but like the answers will reveal themselves, and being able to trust that, right? And always being curious as to what something's trying to tell you.
We say it all the time. It is amazing the shit people will, excuse my language.
It's not
amazing
a kid show.
The
it's
things
okay.
People
Yeah.
It's amazing things people will tell you if you just let them.
Yeah.
Just listen.
Just listen.
This is true.
It's kind of like stove. Like let the fire burn. Just give it a little poke down again, and it'll keep going. We just closed a deal because of it. We just closed a couple $100,000 deal. The AE literally was working with this customer for 6 months and getting zero, like the little traction, couldn't get anything across. He set up independent calls with the different organizations and pulled me in. And to a man, all I did was ask them about their business. Talk to me about your business. I understand Nick's all people brought me up to date. What do you do? And they start talking, and they talked for like 20 minutes before I really even interjected. And literally within those 2 or 3 calls, half-hour calls, figured out where their problems were. They were hemorrhaging money in overtime. They had no idea what their people were doing. It was a whole thing. And it was like, this is their use case. And we sold it within 2 weeks after that conversation.
Yeah. Once you see the cost of inaction, and it's like, would you like to get rid of this problem? Yeah. Solves itself.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, right, when you think of people that are senior in businesses, they don't really want to admit they have problems. They just don't, right? And a lot of times people are, depending on the type of business you're in, they're betting substantial credibility on themselves or their careers in a direction to buy someone's product, right? So it's scary to them. It is. Like, you think about the database world, you make a decision to migrate off a database like Oracle, you're betting your career the
Yeah.
shit's gonna
No
work.
one's making that
That's right.
bet. I think if you're already on Oracle, like
right.
that's you're there. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
So
Love it. Well, just changing gears a little bit, when we talk about, I think you said 90% of the success of companies doesn't happen on the front end, happens on the back end. As a marketer, I love this because this is the cause of probably your customer acquisition problems. The cost problems are related to this. Can you talk a little bit about what that means?
I mean, absolutely. Corinne and I can both talk about it at length, right? Number one, when you think of your company, all right, there are two line items you really need to worry about: how much you sell and how much of that you sold do you retain. I want you to think of it very simply. This is a very simple equation. If I sell $1 million a year, and in that year, after that year, I've churned 100 of it. In order to grow, I have to sell another million to get anywhere, right?
Sounds
Your
like a lot
churn
of work.
footprint is right.
Yeah.
If you have a churn problem, it's tough to outsell it. It just is, right? You have to retain. You not only do you want to retain, the cost to acquire accounts is expensive. The cost to expand accounts is not expensive, right? Once you have them, it's easier to expand, right? So you got to have that story and that roadmap defined pretty well. But when I talk about 90% of a business happens on the back end, it's the experience. It's funny. I'll give you the Warren
I know
Buffett.
exactly where you're going.
You've heard
with
this one?
too.
Yeah, right. It's a very simple concept. I guarantee you the last thing you bought, right? You do not remember how much you paid for it, but you remember the experience, right? How much did you pay for your last car? Exact dollar amount.
Yeah. No idea. No idea.
No clue. But if you go back to the dealership
Yes.
you bought it from, okay, that's the point. People remember their experiences. So things like, I've now sold. Am I sitting out there for 3 weeks, nobody talking to me? I don't know what's going on. Or did I get sold?
Yep.
And then someone reaches out and they do a warm handoff. Like the sales guy's like, hey, thank you for buying. I'm not just dumping you over a fence here. I'm going to introduce you to the people that get forward. And then being with them. It's great to meet you. We're the services team. We're going to onboard you. We can't start for 3 weeks, or we're going to start right, whatever it is. Taking that from sales to the onboarding phase, doing that cleanly, professionally, even if you have a backlog, making sure you're talking to them, right?
Yep.
Then as you're coming out of onboarding, moving them to however you retain your account, choose customer success, moving them to customer success, introducing them, having CSMs proactively engaging, making sure they're using the product, looking if you have the level of complexity that you can look at usage of your product, making sure you're keeping an eye on that, looking at that. And then from a support standpoint and finding ways to expand them. And then from a support standpoint, making sure if there are problems, you're fixing them quickly. And then understanding what matters to your accounts. It's funny, I actually was talking to the chief customer officer at my company, asked a question. I said, do you ask our base what they do, what we do well? And she's like, well, no. And I'm like, you should. And she's like, well, why? I'm like, because the things people tell you do well tells you how they base you immediately. It's like, well, you respond right away, or you respond much to your competitor, or you're really thoughtful and you give me great dashboard. Those are the things you want to double down on in that existing base. But Corrin, what are your thoughts?
No, that was one of the questions, that we were talking about, like what's the most overlooked area? And it is post-sale handoff and implementation between customer success, onboarding, and support. And if you don't have good lines of communication, there's inefficiencies and fall off. That impacts the customer's experience. And it also leads to high churn. And to Justin's point, it's way more expensive to go out and acquire a new logo than it is to maintain your existing customer base and expand.
Yeah.
And have a renewals program too. If you're starting the conversation with customers, 2 weeks, 30 days out from the date.
Hey, it's Q4. I just thought I'd give you a call.
120 days. 120 days minimum. Like if you are, first of all, you should be talking to them consistently anyway. If you're not, it would minimum start 120 days. Even if you talk to them consistently, obviously it depends on if you're commercial or mid-market enterprise, right? The bigger the contract, the more difficult you want to start earlier, but they got to get the value, man. Like that's the other thing. If it's 8 months to get a year contract up and running,
that makes sense. One thing I'd love to ask you about, just because it's something on my mind all the time, I'm always asking myself, how can I sell the thing that everyone already wants to buy right now? Which is often very different question than like okay, I really want to sell this widget. This is what I'm always looking to do, because you can't, I mean, if the market has the demand, there's nothing easier as a marketer. And that's very different from starting from like the thing that made me think about it was when you were saying, how did you evaluate us? It's like these things tell you these demand triggers and like kind of renewal triggers as well. And I'm curious, like, how do you go about adapting to market demands that change?
How do you go about adapting to market demands
That change, yeah.
Well, the first thing I would say is you have to understand what's changing and have a
Mhm.
pulse on it, right? And that's critical. And it
Having,
depends on,
hold on,
yeah,
Justin, and having an avenue for feedback. We talked about this, right? Like with Pendo,
yeah.
like getting the surveys back, not having an avenue or a vehicle for you to get that feedback with your customer
Mhm.
base.
And I would say that listen to the people that are talking to them day in and day out. Like if you're having a roundtable once a quarter with 6 customers and that's your decision point of moving forward, you're missing out on a massive spectrum of insight that you could be extracting. Talk to your salespeople, talk to the SDRs. And I don't know if this is specific to you in marketing, right? But talk to the people that are in the trenches, right? And I used to have this battle all the time at one of my companies. It was like, they would try to go in a direction and I would look at it and it would be like, that's not what customers are asking for. Why are we doing this? Well, it's like, they look that they're all asking for, like every single one of them are asking for this, like 90-10. Like if you can fit 90% or 80% of the market, like you're going to win.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to find that percent, it's like, why are you spending the time there? So yeah, did we answer your question though? I don't know if we did.
I think so. Yeah, it's a weird question. It's kind of a hard one, because as a
Yeah.
marketer and running a marketing agency, you can say, okay, well, this is being sold right now. What's a great partner where I can help them grow that business? But I find that like once a founder or company is dead set on something, it's difficult for them to adjust. And sometimes I talk to people
Yep.
where maybe they have a more legacy product and it's less competitive, and they're always asking like, we market this better. And it's like, well, maybe you should adjust it. Like let's try different offers. Let's try. And I'm curious, how do larger companies go about that? Because if, when you're smaller, okay, you can make big, you can move the little speedboat around. It's just very small. Yeah. Is there something there that's interesting?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's a
Mhm.
tough question actually, right?
I think
Because
that's a
the
tough
larger
question.
the bigger you
Mean
get,
one.
it's like there are so many downstream things you have to think of as a company when you're in the $50-100 million range that you have to think of, right? Like it's not just changing a direction. It's like, what directional change do you make? Is it going to address the long-term
Mhm.
market, or is it going to address like a spike in the market in a specific thing,
And I
right?
think it's
And
also
that's the
important to know what the overall strategic goals are of the
Yeah.
company. Are you looking to sell? Because the decisions that you make if you're looking to sell are very different if you are in it for the long
Mhm.
game. So you make very
Mhm.
different depending on what your overall exit strategy is.
Right. Versus like a
That's
cash flowing business that's a different like vehicle than, okay, we're building enterprise value and we're going to
Absolutely.
sell to this PE firm.
Absolutely.
Yeah, that
Mhm.
makes sense.
Yeah. And then I've had multiple conversations with big companies that are like, this is our standardized run rate and this is where our company was built off of. But we have a separate arm that we're focusing on. Maybe they're use simple terms. They're an on-prem company that deploys on-prem, and they're pivoting because they want to be part of the
Mhm.
cloud business and they see the growth in cloud, right? And they have to keep that run rate
Yeah,
going
they
in their
can't sink
business,
the
and they
main
still have to
ship
grow.
while they launch the side searches.
Right. So we see a lot of that too. And it's like how you do that pivot has to be
Yeah.
seamless for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I
Yeah.
see.
A lot of it,
No, I didn't.
sorry to interrupt you. A lot can be with acquisitions as
Yeah.
well.
Yeah.
When
And
they,
like I see companies sometimes they'll launch a single feature product off brand and just like try to,
Mhm.
okay, we have this investment to see if that becomes anything before they can pull it back in. But so many different ways to go about it.
Yeah. I mean, and one of the things that Corinne and I always laugh about is it's like, why are you trying to recreate the widget?
Yeah.
If Jim on the street makes the best widget in the world and we need a widget and it costs $10, bring it in. Just go buy the damn thing. Like, why are we spending 10 years of development to build the widget?
Yeah.
That was my
That's a
next
good
thing,
point.
talking
Yeah.
about mergers and acquisitions rather than going out there. Why don't you just go acquire the talent and bring it in?
Yeah. Makes a lot of sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
Certain size, you should just buy it versus like, well, we'll have a skunk works. And yeah, well, this has been great, guys. Can we do a quick lightning round of a few questions? Okay.
Sure.
Hey.
So we talked about one book. What is the best piece of advice you've ever received from a mentor?
Go ahead, Corinne. Or I can go
Oh my
first. John.
goodness. Yeah, I've gotten a lot of good advice. I think so. 3 things have been told to me. 1, compensation drives behavior. We talk about this all the time, Justin.
Mhm.
You got to pay people to focus on it. Data and numbers always tell a story. To your data and numbers, it's going to tell you what you need to know. And giving people the people aspect of giving people the space to grow.
Yeah.
Those
I would
are my
say
3 things.
invest in your people. I'm sorry, Corinne. I thought you would.
Yeah, I was going to say those are just my 3 main things that have always stuck with me.
Excellent.
Yeah. I'd say invest in your people, right? Push them when they need to be pushed, but trust them when they need to trust them. I would say, believe it or not, one leader, he said to me something that always stuck with me is like, never take your eyes off the numbers, right? No matter what's going on, never lose for business, right? Because you can do that quick. So invest in your people, trust your instincts too, right? If you've been doing this for 25 years, you can tell like which way, like you trust your instincts.
Okay, I love it. Last question. Can you fill in the blank? Most SaaS companies fail to scale because they blank.
So most SaaS companies fail to scale because they miss the big bit. 90%. They're missing the point. And the point isn't I have all the shiny whistles and I have all the bells and this and that. Point is fix the problem and make it important to their business and they won't leave and they'll keep buying, right? They fail because.
Love it. What about you, Corinne? How do you say?
I think that not having a clear strategic vision that you can push down to your organization so everybody's swimming in the same direction. When you have people with competing priorities and you have your culture and your counterculture, that stuff can take you off rails super fast.
Yeah, that's a great point, right? One of the, so we at EDB, right? The company we grew from 25, 30 million, whatever it was, to 150 and sold for $1 billion over a 2.5 year period. There was not, I'll give the CEO credit for this, Ed. There was not a person in that company that you could say, what is the goal of EDB? To a person, everybody would say 3 by 3. We're tripling the revenue 3 times over 3 years. Everybody knew. And like understanding each role played a part in that was important. There's like people have a job, right? And people go to work every day. But I can promise you this, they go through the motions unless they feel like they're part
Absolutely.
of it, right? And the whole, like whatever. But if like they know what they're doing has an impact to the overall business, it makes a difference. It does.
Love it. Yeah, very true. Thank you so much, Justin and Corinne. I've loved having you on the show.
It was fun to be here,
good
man.
time.